Hey guys, it's Gregor, aka Alfred von Tirpitz, and in this video I'm going to be doing a statistical comparison of the German battleships coming into the game to the counterparts that we currently have in-game, and how I think they're going to function. So, the line and the ships that will accompany the line, they're all confirmed at this point, and if you've watched my coverage of the German cruisers and the Russian destroyers in the past, you'll be aware of how this video is going to go down as well. Like the other two battleship lines in the game, they both start off at Tier 3, grinded out from the Tier 3 cruiser, and then you go down to the Tier 10. Keep in mind, all of the statistics I'm covering here are for the fully upgraded versions of the ships in question. The statistics are also subject to change come the official patch, but I'm confident that they will stay relatively similar. Armor characteristics are also assumed in many instances based off of historical data. Okay, so the start of the line should have a lot going for it thanks to how atrocious the Kawasaki and the South Carolina are. At Tier 3, Nassau has a main battery of 6 dual-barrel 283mm turrets with a reload speed of a little over 22 seconds. So the caliber of the main guns is a bit lower than the 305s the other ships at her tier have, but this is compensated for by better reloads. Her hull bristles with secondaries too. 8 88mm cannons and 6 150mm cannons on each side of the ship. She also has 4 88mm cannons for an AA suite, though at this tier such a thing is a bit negligible. Max speed 20 knots. Nassau is also an incredibly resilient vessel with 35,400 hit points, 300mm of belt armor, and 280mm for her turrets. I think Nassau somewhat beautifully summarizes the main appealing aspect of these battleships. Lots and lots of armor with really powerful close-range weaponry that can eviscerate ships that get too close. That's what these ships are all about. They're close-range knife fighters, brawlers. Get up close and personal, and fire lots and lots of rounds, Joe LaMotta style. Nassau has better secondaries by far than either the South Carolina or the Kawasaki, and I'm assuming if her shell dispersion ratings aren't absolutely atrocious, she'd make a fine introduction to the German battleship line. Let's continue. Tier 4 hosts the Kaiser, the Wyoming, and the Myogi. Now, the Wyoming is considered better than the Myogi, but the Myogi doesn't exactly set a high standard either. Kaiser has 5 turrets, dual-barreled, 305mm. That's the same caliber as Wyoming, though not as bad as Myogi's 355s. 30-second reload. Her firing range isn't too bad either, at a little over 14.5 kilometers. Speed 23 knots, 46,400 hit points, as well as a tough belt of 350mm. Secondaries once again are where this ship shines, 14 150mm cannons, considerably higher caliber, and in larger amounts than either Wyoming or Myogi. Again, very, very tough gun turrets and loads of secondaries. Main battery isn't quite as numerous or as high caliber as the Wyoming or Myogi. The ship has so many secondaries that I don't think it really matters. Get up close, let them have it. So now we're at Tier 5, where Congo is the crown jewel at this tier, but the König should still bring something to the table based off of how good the past couple ships have been. König has 5 dual-barreled 305mm turrets, like the Kaiser, lower in caliber than Congo or New York, which both have 356mm cannons, though the reload time is still faster. König is the king in close-range brawling once again, with 14 150mm cannons and 8 105mm cannons that have longer range than either Congo or New York. Now, Congo is tougher than König in terms of hit points, but König still has the toughest citadel and turrets. The competition becomes considerably less skewed here, but the König still stands out as a respectable Tier 5 battleship, with lower caliber but faster firing guns, a plethora of long-range secondaries and anti-aircraft guns, and the toughest citadel armor of any at her tier. Alright, now to Tier 6. The Fuso is usually considered the better of the two Tier 6 battleships. Still, the Bayern brings a lot to the table. Bayern gets higher caliber cannons, 4 turrets, dual-barreled with 380mm cannons, and this is actually higher caliber than either Fuso or New Mexico. Fuso actually gets the reload advantage here as well as range. Bayern still brings lots of long-range secondaries though, and has the toughest armor belt, and is even the fastest of the Tier 6 battleships at 25 knots, edging just over Fuso. So, another crowd favorite in the German battleship line. The argument for best ship at her tier gets a little bit more competitive at Tier 6 with battleships, but Bayern is still a really good ship in her own right. Then you see a sort of shift at Tier 7. The Gneisenau, sister ship to Scharnhorst, is a lot like a battlecruiser in many ways and still delivers, competing against a very good ship, Nagato, but not so much Colorado. Now, Gneisenau, though the conversion process was never finished in real life, has her planned 380mm cannons, 3 turrets, dual-barreled, and lower in caliber than the 410s of the Nagato and the 406s of the Colorado, but still serviceable, as always, thanks to a quicker reload of 26 seconds and a middling range of 19.5 kilometers. Her secondary batteries are easily more numerous than her contemporaries, with 22 pieces of 128mm cannons, and she's considerably faster than her counterparts at 32 knots. Hit points not as beefy as Nagato, with 58,200 points as opposed to 78,500, but still more than Colorado, and her armor belt is the toughest of Tier 7 battleships at 350mm. A fine battleship that will make a name for itself up close and personal, as usual. Then things get interesting once more at Tier 8 with Bismarck. Now, the Bismarck's reputation precedes it, but it has some good competition between Amagi and North Carolina. Anyway, 380mm cannons like Gneisenau, so not as high caliber as Amagi or North Carolina, but once again, reload speed. Middling firing range, a little over 21 knots. Lots and lots of secondaries, 12 pieces of 150s, and 16 pieces of 105s, with higher firing range for her secondaries than either ships. Her AA complement is also quite good, and she's the fastest and toughest of Tier 8 battleships at 31 knots and 69,200 hit points, with a belt of 320mm. I'd argue she seems a tad bit overpowered, but let's not jump to conclusions. We're going to finish up this video with higher tiers. Alright, now we're at the big leagues, Tier 9. Friedrich the Große is an unfinished paper ship named after old Fritz, the King of Prussia himself. Iowa and Izumo make strong cases for themselves. Old Fritz brings the highest caliber guns to Tier 9 with 4 researchable dual-barreled turrets carrying 4 20mm Blazet cannons. Slower reload, but who cares? Why is everyone in a rush? Man. Firing range is the lowest for a change at a little over 21 kilometers. Her secondaries are still the most numerous, with 16 pieces of 105mm cannons and 12 pieces of 150s, 7 kilometers. And Old Fritz also doesn't get the armor advantage here with a belt of 300mm as opposed to 356 on Izumo and 307 on Iowa. HP is still the largest, though, with 84,300 hit points, and she has middling speed at 30 knots, with Iowa edging her out at 33 knots. So this ship still has considerably potent secondaries, and I think it'd be wise to make usage of them, but it's interesting to see the shifts here. Moving on to Tier 10, the Übermensch, the final German battleship. The namesake of the Tier 10 battleship is Friedrich William, the Great Elector. Große Kurfürst. It's a common joke that the Yamato is the better of the 2 Tier 10 battleships we have right now, but I suppose that's left to debate in the long term. Let's see how the German does. Große Kurfürst still has her Blazet cannons, 4 of them triple-barreled turrets. Not as high caliber as Yamato's 460 mils, but in more numbers. Reload time is the slowest by 2 seconds at 32. She still has the highest number of secondaries though, 12 128 mils and 8 150s. She gets some speed, 30 knots, tied with Montana, and Yamato the slowest at 27 knots. To nobody's surprise, Yamato is still the toughest battleship in the game, with 410mm of belt armor and 97,200 hit points. But Große Kurfürst, for once, is at the bottom of the ladder here. 380mm of belt armor as opposed to Montana's 409, and 88,000 hit points as opposed to Montana's 96,300. So it looks like the German battleship line up to the very last 2 tiers is a little bit different than the counterparts that precede them, though throughout almost its entirety, the line boasts ships with the toughest armor belts and lower caliber main cannons with a considerable amount of secondaries. At Tier 9, gun caliber becomes a little bit more prevalent, as well as a little more dank. Do the Blazet cannons make or break these warships? Well, I can't tell you that. Not until I see these ships in action for myself, but personally, I'm willing to bet that in spite of lower numbers in other departments at high tiers, they'll do just fine. I think this line is going to put a little bit more pep into the game after a long time of sitting around with no significant additions and content, and I can't wait to try them out. That's all I have for you. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe for more World Warships coverage like this in the future, as I will certainly be covering the German battleships as well as the premium Scharnhorst upon release, and give the video a thumbs up, share it with your friends. It really does go a long way. Until then, though, I'm Gregor. Thanks so much for watching. Auf Wiedersehen.